All right. Well, welcome to week 2. This week, we're going to talk about business planning and the importance of business planning. And once again, my name is Looney. I'm your teacher here today. I'm the creator of Fledge, which is the bigger brand here for Business Accelerators, the global brand. I do a lot of things. All I really do is help entrepreneurs. For the last 9 years, I spend every day just helping entrepreneurs like you grow their companies. One of the things I've done to do that is to write a series of books. So rather than lecture you everything that's in the book today, or the book series today, I'm just going to point you to the book series. So it's at lunarmobiscuit.com, the next step with dashes. You can find it on Google. Amanda, if you can find that on the internet and then just pop it in the chat window, that would be great. Then you guys can open up another tab while I'm speaking. This is a screenshot here on the right of what that page looks like. There are 6 books I've wrote for you. The first one you can read for free on the internet, and we'll go over a little bit of that today. The other ones you can read the first opening chapters for free, and then the rest you need to go buy. But I did do a podcast a few years ago where I basically covered everything else in the books, so you can just listen to the podcast for free. And then there are some lectures that are free online as well. So again, me speaking like this, except without the live audience. And you can get, I don't know, a few of those on there for free as well. That should get you started on this process. What you'll find in that online classroom in lesson 1 is a skills map. So what I do when I start teaching this for the fledglings, as we call them, or what we do when I'm teaching this to my MBA students, is to map the skills of the entrepreneurs. And so this is a self-assessment. This is not something that I grade you on or anyone else grades you on. This is something you grade yourself on. And what you'll see here is there's 7 different topics. All right, and I'll go through each of the topics and what they mean. And you can actually see there's a revision of this. This is an older version. I just noticed that. And Sam, you're not on mute. And so what happens when you do this self-assessment is you discover what you're not good at, what you need to work on. And the point here is to work on the stuff you're not so good on. So on a scale of 1 to 7, and we just pick 7 because it's a nice number. How good are you at strategy and tactics, design, marketing, sales, storytelling, financial, and operations? The basic theory here is that if you are weak in one of these areas, if you don't know how to do one of these areas sufficiently, you're going to fail as an entrepreneur. Your company is going to fail, or the odds of you failing go way up. Simplest version of this, simplest explanation on why this is true would be if you don't know how to do sales, which comes up once in a while. I get a lot of early entrepreneurs that understand how to find a problem and create a solution and market it, but not actually how to price it or sell it. And so if you don't know how to do sales or don't know how to do sales well, then you're not going to have money flowing into your company. You're not going to have customers. And without money, you're going to run out of money and go out of business. Some of these other things may not look like they're important, like design, but life will be so much easier if you know something about design. Your company will have a much better chance of thriving. Operations is also pretty obvious. If you can't operate your company, you're probably going to fail. So the idea, again, is to figure out what you're not so good at. I'm a visual person, so I like to show it as a picture. And if you go and download the skills map, which you'll find in the online classroom, you'll get a pretty picture like this. And so the next question is, once you figure out what you're not so good at, how are you going to fix that? Excuse me. Little hair in my mouth. And so what are you going to do to fix that? So one thing you could do is you could go and take the rest of the online materials and go find more on the internet, because there's a ton of materials for all these things on the internet, and go and fill in your gap of knowledge. This is something that sounds obvious, but it's usually not what people do, because let's say you're not good at marketing. Well, that generally means you don't like marketing. So it doesn't mean that you're typically going to jump out to the library or the bookstore and go get a book on marketing, because if you liked it, you would have read that book already, and you wouldn't be weak on marketing. Same thing on financials, which is a really common area for people not to be excited about. Like, to jump in and read those books about accounting. Right? I wish I could see you all and have you raise your hands on who here would love right now tonight to go read a book on accounting. Right? It's probably not 50 out of 100. It's certainly not 80 out of 100. You know, there might be 10 of you out there that really are excited about financials and accounting. But you got to go fill in these gaps. So your two choices are either to fill them in by learning something yourself, or to fill them in by hiring someone, either a co-founder or a team member, who is good at them. And that brings us to the next issue. So let's say you're not good at sales. Let's just say you're weak in that area. So you're going to go hire a salesperson is one of the common solutions, because there are salespeople out there, right? There are plenty of people for hire. How are you going to know if you found the right salesperson? How do you know when you're interviewing the salesperson if they are a good salesperson if you're not good at sales? And even worse, you find someone, you really like them, they seem like the right person, you hire them, and sales don't pick up. Now what? Is it sales didn't pick up because you hired the wrong person? Or sales didn't pick up because they're not selling in the right way? Or sales didn't pick up because the marketing team's not doing a good job and maybe you're the marketing team? You know, it's very hard to tell why sales aren't working if you don't understand how sales work. So we're back to square one of go buy a book on sales and go learn something about it, right? Or go out and try and sell yourself and learn on the job. This is the basic dilemma of entrepreneurship. You need to be able to do all these things. You need to have at least a 4 or 5 on my scale of 1 to 7 on all 7 topics, so that you, as the founders of the company or the CEO of the company, can see everything that's going on and understand what people are doing and understand where they're falling down and need some help. Right? That is my fundamental thesis of entrepreneurship. That entrepreneurs are generalists, not specialists. Those people out there, those masses of people who go get jobs, yeah, they tend to be specialists, right? They're good at either marketing or sales or operations, right? Or design or accounting or fundraising or something. They're good at one thing. But we don't have the luxury as entrepreneurs of being good at one thing. We have to be good at everything. We have to be at least pretty good at everything. All right, so now we're going to jump into the book. I saw something in the chat window.
Hi, Looney. Since you took a small break, our interpreters have arrived. Okay. I am trying to invite them to turn on the interpretation. So if you speak French, si vous parlez français, you can look at the way to catch.
I'll go.
Sorry about my dogs, guys. The way to catch interpretation is look at the globe at the bottom of the screen.
I'll go do that quick.
Michelle, is everything?
Screen interpretations down here, and then you can pick English or French. And so if you speak, I can't do this in French. If you speak French, click on French right now. When the French, for all the English people, when the French people are speaking, if you come in here and click on English, the interpreters, at least last week, were interpreting back to English. That was helpful.
Amanda.
Yes, I heard you, Michelle. I don't know why it's not going through because I've done it twice. So let me try again to make it happen. I mean, I'm not. Do you see it now, Michelle?
Yeah, it just popped up.
No, not yet. I don't have the interpretation interface. That's what I'm waiting for.
Well, I'm doing the same thing that I've done every other time, so I'm not sure why it wouldn't be working. I'm ending it. I'm adding you as an interpreter. I'm pressing start, and it says English and French interpretation available. And I've also tried to add Bridget because I see she's available, and it's also not working for me to add her either. I tried to add her.
Yeah. Because I used the new link you sent.
Okay.
So I'm now connected through internet, like my laptop is now on.
I mean, you're in this room, so I don't know what to say. And are you in here twice?
Yeah. No, actually I am now connected with one device, just my one laptop.
Do you want to try and sign out, sign back in? We'll continue with the presentation and we'll try one more time. Join us again.
Okay, all right, yeah, let me sign off and
Okay.
then yeah, we restart.
Thanks. So guys, I have to apologize that I don't know why he's not able to connect. Looney, would you want to wait a couple seconds or would you like to just go on at this point?
I'll let you guys figure that in the background while I keep going.
Okay, perfect. Continue. Thank you.
All right, we're back to the book here. So we left off on the skills map and back to the book here. The book is really about business planning. That's the gist of the class I taught to MBAs. That's the gist of what I teach when I do my accelerators. And you're getting a little taste of that here. You're not getting the whole, we didn't have time to do the whole thing in this program. There are 3 types of companies in this accelerator. There's a continuum of companies, but we can throw them into 3 buckets. So there are the companies that are early, very early. There's a few idea stage companies, a lot of prototype stage companies, very small amounts of revenue, not enough to pay everybody yet. There are a very large number of companies here that have early revenues. So a significant amount of revenues, enough to call it an operational company. Everybody's being paid or almost being paid. Everyone's being paid something. And your goal is to get a lot bigger. And then there are some companies here that I would call early growth. Early growth is, let's say, up to $1 million a year in business, but even I think we have one that's 3 million. It's still pretty early. It's still has a long way to go. All 3 can benefit from this process of business planning. And I've had companies of all these stages, including brand new idea stage companies in the programs, along with companies earning close to $1 million a year. They actually benefit from the same exact process. The same process of business planning is useful for everyone. So here's an actual diagram. Here's actual chart of the revenues of the companies in this program. So I simply sorted them by revenues and threw them into a chart. So there are literally almost 100 bars here. There were a couple that didn't report. There were a few that were smaller than $100 a year, and so they got truncated on the left. But you can see here, ideas prototype. I'm just kind of arbitrarily putting it at $5,000 per year. Where early revenues is from that to, let's say, 100,000 would be a better place to draw that line. And then early growth is from 100 to 1 million. And then there are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you out there that have over $1 million in revenue. Yeah, that would be the middle growth phase, not the last of the growth phases, but you still could use some business planning if you haven't done it yet. That will help you get bigger. So what do you need to do if you're in that idea or prototype stage? Right, you have, I'm going to give you the top 3 priorities for each stage. And in the earliest stage, if you are still there, still struggling, you really only have one thing to do. What you need to do is figure out what you can put in the market that someone will buy. Right? The whole idea of startups is to bring something to market that customers will buy for more than it costs you to make. That is the whole trick of startup life. Right? That's how I summarize entrepreneurship in a sentence. That is not an easy thing to do. If you're still down there struggling, if we'll go back here, if you're still struggling at a few $1,000s per year, you think you have the right answer, but you don't, because customers are not calling you on the phone. Customers are not sending you WhatsApp saying, I need this right now. They're not doing it in enough volume to put you in this middle group of companies. So your job is to find something that they will buy. And that might be a small tweak, or 5 tweaks or 5 small changes to what you're selling now, it may be something completely different. You may just not be listening to your customers well enough. If you're in that early revenue stage in the middle there, then your priorities are to get to scale, right? So you got to build a supply to meet the demand. You got to build the demand as well, but usually the harder part is to build the supply to meet the demand. You got to build your operations to make them leaner and more efficient. You got to do that because you got to scale up. You got to be able to put out more product without hiring. You need to be able to double your output without doubling your team. And you need to grow a team. You still do need to grow your team. And the more people you add to your team, the harder it is to run your company. Maybe you haven't quite learned that yet in the $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year companies. When you get to when you have a company and it's 5 or 6 or 7 people, you know everybody. You've hired everyone. You know what they do. You know what their strengths are and their weaknesses. You work around that. When you get to have a company of 20 or 30, starts to be hard to remember who everyone is. It's very hard to keep track of what everyone's doing. You start to get to a stage at 20 or 30 where you start to get a hierarchy in your company, a pretty strict hierarchy. And some of those subordinates of yours are going to be the ones hiring other people. It's going to be out of your hands at some point. That's a interesting phase to go through as an entrepreneur. So priority 1 is get up to scale, get past $100,000 a year in business. It's not going to end your problems, but it's going to give you new problems, better problems. Priority number 2 is to get more customers. The way you get up to scale, the way you get to be bigger, is you get more customers asking you for more stuff. So when you do that, you will then have issues, again, building supply to match. You will then have issues of getting your operations to make sure all those new customers are happy. Same thing with team is true of customers. When you have 5 or 10 or 50 customers, you can have a nice simple list. You can make you can put it on your wall in paper, and you can be marking off things in order to keep track of how your customers are doing and how happy they are and how satisfied and how well you're delivering to them. When you have 100, 400 or 500 customers, that's much harder to do. And last on the priority list is to make sure you are profitable and stay there. There's a philosophy here in the States, in the startup world, which is called a venture scale company. That's one way to talk about it. And the idea is that you can go raise money and not worry about, you can go raise money and use that money to grow and not worry about profits. That's just not true over in Africa. In Africa, the typical way that a company would get from the early stage where they might not be profitable through this middle path, through this middle stage of early revenues, is to find profits, right? At least break even, right? The amount of money you spend has to be no more than the amount of money you brought in, right? Not to keep going back to friends and family, not to be spending out of your own savings, but run a company that's profitable. And again, that might sound obvious to you, except it's not. There is a significant portion of startups out there that don't follow that path. They follow what's called the burn path. They go out, they find some money, whether it's a grant or a loan or something, and they go burn that money. They go spend that money in order to grow, hoping that once they're bigger, then they can find profits. The other path is called the earn path. The earn path is find profits as soon as you can, and then grow based on your profits. And if you start down that path, if you get on that path where you are at least break even, then when you go out to try and talk to funders, and we'll talk about that some other week, but when you're out talking to funders, they're going to appreciate the fact that you're profitable, and that will give you much better standing with them and increase the odds that you get their money. But don't just burn their money to go grow. Use their money to be more profitable, right? Bigger and more profitable. All right, then we get to that third group of companies, which are the early growth companies. And you got 3 priorities too, and they're slightly different priorities. Number 1 priority is grow. Right? So I haven't met an entrepreneur who's happy with the size of their company. Hopefully at some point I will, hopefully I'll find a company that's $100 million a year and says, we just need to grow, 2% per year. But right now, every company I have in my portfolio and I've ever taught always wants to be bigger. So of course, early growth, you want to be bigger, right? Early growth was 100,000 to 1 million in revenue. As soon as you pass that 100,000 mark, everybody I've ever talked to in Africa, the next milestone is $1 million in revenue. Even though you're not doing business in dollars usually, the milestone is still $1 million in US dollar equivalent, right? Whatever that is in your own country. It's a really nice milestone. I've helped a couple of companies pass through that milestone. Feels great, right? And I'm American, so I like dollars, so it's especially good for me. It resonates with me. So you got to grow. And typically the problem I'm seeing with the companies once they get past a few 100,000 in US dollar equivalent is that demand starts to pick up where you can't deliver everything that's being demanded. I have a bunch of companies, I'll talk about them in a bit, where
dont je vais parler dans le temps, c'est que
you're in the main channel. So I have a bunch of companies where their problem is that customers.
Parler des entreprises où...
No, I can't lecture with the French going at the same time.
I am not sure what happened. This is the first time that it's been even working. And Looney, can you make sure that you're not in the French option?
Sure.
Michelle, can you speak to let us know that you're actually doing translation?
Yes. Actually, I'm
there's no translation option, Amanda.
Okay, let me try this again.
Yeah.
Sorry, Michelle, is it working now?
I'm still, I'm actually wondering what is wrong because normally it should be direct, but.
All right.
Let me see.
Okay, so I just think I have no idea why it's not working because I keep trying things and Michelle is not able to see what he usually sees.
Can I join with my laptop instead of my phone and see if that will make a difference?
Of course you can.
Yes.
So check your email because the link was sent to your email as well through the calendar invite.
Okay, great. Let me do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the troubles of Zoom. Welcome back to early growth. So I'll get back to the growth part. All right. So priority number 2. You've now got to the stage, and this is somewhat true of the early revenues people as well. You've got some customers. It's much easier to sell something new to an existing customer than it is to find a new customer. That's just a truism of business. So what else can you sell these customers? What else do they need that fits in with what everything else you're doing as your business? What can you add? We would call that a line extension. What can you add as a second product or a third product that these same customers would buy? And now you can, again, double or triple your revenues that way, or even just increase them by 50%. And then the third priority is not to run out of money, which is always a priority, but it becomes especially true at this stage, a few 100,000 to a few million in revenue, because what generally happens is as you get to be a big enough company and start to sell things to bigger companies, right? Especially if your business model is to sell to companies, those customers, those big supermarket customers in the food space, they don't pay you when you deliver the food to them or the products to them. They pay you, they'll say 30 days, they'll call it net 30. They'll pay you 30 days after delivery, which, often turns into 45 days after delivery. But you have to pay your vendors. You have to pay your smallholder farmers or whoever you're getting your stuff from. You got to pay them when you pick it up, which means you have a gap. You have at least a 45-day gap because you got to pick up the stuff. Usually do something to it, at least put it in a box, send it off to the actual customer, and then get paid 30 days later. That's a 45-day gap. So you wind up with a capital trap, a capital gap. Where you just don't have the money to actually deliver to customers. And we see this all the time in these early growth companies. Okay, so the answer to all these questions on how you get where you're going is business planning, right? There's a few ways to do this. I'm going to tell you about two that you shouldn't follow, but I just want you to understand what they are. So the old method, back when I was a first-time entrepreneur, back in the 90s and before that, the old method was to do a lot of research. So literally, we were told, go talk to potential customers. Go talk to as many potential customers as you can, understand what their problems are, figure out what a solution is, and then sit down and design that solution. And then stop talking to customers and go and build it. And the word alpha and beta test comes from the tech world. I am a former techie. But basically what it means is you go off and you spend your time building some solution out there, and then you find a few friendly potential customers to try it out, to see if you got it right or not. And often they'll say it's okay because you're not charging them any money, and then you launch it, and then you hope you got that process right. And when we're talking about physical products, or if we're talking about software products, which is my space, this time frame was often a year long. So we would research. Actually, it was a year from build to hope, or build to launch. So we would just disappear for a year, and we would go build a product. And when we popped back up a year later with this product, we really did hope that we got it right, because we didn't have enough money to try it again. So if we got it wrong, we were toast. So what this looks like in graphical form is, again, research, sit in this loop for a while until you think you figured out what was correct, then go build it, then go sell it. And if you got it right, then that's good. Then you can go grow your company. And if you got it wrong, you're basically back to square one. You're back to researching what went wrong. What'd you get wrong? Try again. This is also called the waterfall method. And again, I put it up here, and I should put this in red. Don't use this method. It's out of date. Better method got published in, I think it was 2005 in this book called The 4 Steps to the Epiphany. So I don't suggest this method either, and I really don't suggest you read the book. The book is almost impossible to read. It's just a terribly written book, but it had a good idea in it at the time. There's a better idea. So again, don't use this method, but I want you to understand it. This method, he said, okay, there's 4 steps to get this right. There's that research thing, but he's going to call that a different name. He's going to call it customer discovery. So figure out who the customers might be. But before you build anything, go and validate that with customers. He explains it in some really obscure ways on how to do that. But go talk to customers about what they think they need, and then go talk to customers and ask them, did I get this right? I've been talking to customers for a long time. They tell me they need such and such. Am I right? And usually they'll say yes. And if they say yes, you can move on. If they say no, you're back to square one again. But you haven't spent a year building. That's the difference here. And then once you get to the customer creation phase, now you are selling a product. Now you've built something quickly and you're starting to sell it and create some customers. So this is where customers are paying you. And then he says in his book, basically, don't go fundraise until you've done that. Don't go fundraise until you have a bunch of customers, and then go fundraise and build your company. Now, what he doesn't explain is, okay, how do you go to and have a product in the market without having any money to go build a product for the market? There's a few little.
Take this. Oh, Looney, just wanted to take the break. French is working. If you didn't check that in the chat, it's on. You can go to the globe and select French. So just to say what Divine wrote for us, la version française est disponible. Allez sur global et sélectionnez français. All right, continue.
Okay, so the general problem with both of these methods is in the beginning. The general problem is that when you ask customers what they think they want, you don't get the right answers. And this is not intuitive. This is not what you would think would happen, which is why it was done wrong for decades. When you go on and you talk to a customer, yes, you can figure out what their problems are. And yes, you might be able to figure out what a solution is. But when you get to that question of, would you buy this? The problem is that more often than not, they say yes. So, when you go out and talk, there's a whole bunch of companies here that do organic fertilizers. Nice, simple example. And when you go out to farmers and said, would you like organic fertilizers? They're all going to say yes. Nobody's going to, maybe one will say no because he's been brainwashed that chemical fertilizers are better and organic's bad. But everybody else, and the vast majority of those customers are going to say yes. What that doesn't tell you is, will they buy organic fertilizers if it were available? You can't figure that out by just talking to them. You're not going to get a right answer, nor are you ever going to get a good idea of what they'll pay, what the price should be. And if you don't know what the price is going to be, you don't know how much you can spend making the fertilizer. And it may be that wherever you are, it may just be that you can't make organic fertilizer at a low enough cost, that what they'll pay is not higher than what it costs you to not only make the product and deliver the product to them, but actually run a company behind it. Right? That we call that penciling out. We'll get to that another week as well. So there was a new idea that was published in about 2011. And in the book, it's called The Lean Startup. I highly recommend the book. It's really good. It turns out that the guy who wrote the book, Eric, he was a student. He was a student of Steve Blank. So Steve was an investor in California. And he said, I'll only invest in your company if you come to my class. He was teaching at one of the prestigious universities in Silicon Valley. And so Eric said, all right, I really want your money. So yes, I'll come take your class. And it's good for the world that he took the class because he came up with a better method. And the method he calls is the lean startup based on lean manufacturing. In terms of how you get a product to market, it's much, much simpler. You have an idea. You go and find the minimal way to get that launched and you launch it. You get the product in market, right? Something that resembles your product, something. In the worst case, you just have a sales deck. In the worst case, all you've done is taken your idea and you've made a sales pitch out of it. And you go to a customer and you say, will you buy this? Just as if you had it. Ideally, you do have it. Ideally, you have a little prototype and you've made some. But worst case, you just have a sales pitch. And you tell them what the solution is and you tell them what the price is. And you sell it to them as if they could buy it right now. And when you do that, more often than not, they'll say no. A good sales process, not salesman or saleswoman, but sales process. A good sales process will close, 1 out of 10 customer conversations, maybe slightly better than that, but 1 out of 20 is not bad. 1 out of 10 is really good. So if you go out and 1 out of 10 people say, yes, I'll buy that. Well, that means that 9 out of 10 of the people won't buy it. And that's the key piece you want to know. Why won't they buy it? What is missing from this product that 9 out of 10 people will say no? And if you do this at a face-to-face conversation at the beginning of your business, you will then learn what you're doing wrong and you can fix it. Right? So that's where the loop comes in. So you want to learn from each sales process. If they say yes, that's fine. Take their money, figure out how to deliver the product, make some money. That's great. That's not going to get you to that $1 million a year business. The $1 million a year business comes from the 9 out of 10 that said no, and you asking, well, why? Some of them won't give you a real answer. Some of them will lie to you. Some of them just won't answer the question in any meaningful way. But every so often, someone will, and you'll get one more tidbit of information on what you did wrong, and then you can try again. So in the book, they come up with this loop, right? Come up with a hypothesis. It's the scientific method. I talked about this last week. Come up with a hypothesis for what you think the market needs. Create that solution. Get it in the market. Don't just talk about it. Don't just ask people, would you buy it if I made this? Skip that part. Just go make it happen. Go make it happen and make a web page or a one page sales presentation. Get it in the market. Go ask customers to buy it. And then do a good job of measuring whether or not that worked or not. So keep track of how many customers you talked to and whether they said yes or no. And that's this really simple measure of close rate. And see if it's 1 in 20 or 1 in 30 or 1 in 40, 1 in 50 or 1 in 10, right? Get the actual number. And then when you make a change, see if it's changed your close rate. and then learn from that and try again and iterate through this as quickly as you can. That's what we were talking about last week in the Tuesday lecture, right? So ideally you're updating this every week, or you know, in some cases when I was doing this as my startups, we would iterate every time we had a customer conversation. We'd be out talking to really big customers. You know, I used to sell to the biggest companies in the US. And every single time we went on and did a sales pitch, if they said no, we would huddle together and figure out why they were saying no. You know, we would push on them and try and get some tidbits. And there'd be 3 of us in the room. And so we would all literally talk about what was talked about in the room, try and figure out what we did wrong, make a change, either a change to the product or just a change to the sales pitch, and then try again. All right, take a break here. All right, so let's go back to how this applies to those 7 skills that I talked about in the skills map. And I do highly advise you do the skills map. If Amanda wants you to turn it in, she'll tell you in a bit. Okay, so on the strategy side, so we're just going to go around this map here. So on strategy and tactics, in terms of business planning, what you need to understand is what's your goal? Have you actually sat down with your co-founding team or your management team and discussed what your goals are for the year? Have you discussed what your goals are for the company? Has that actually been verbally spoken or not? Or is it just implied that bigger is better? Like, have that conversation of what your goals are. For example, you know, depending on where you are in terms of your scale of your company, maybe one of your goals this year is that everybody's actually paid. Maybe the goal is everyone's paid something. Maybe the goal is everyone's paid a reasonable wage. You know, that's a nice goal to have. I like being paid. Maybe your goal is to get to $1 million a year in annual revenues. Right? Maybe your goal is to do that in 21 or 22 or 23. Like, when is that goal? Everybody should want to be at least that big. Or almost everybody in this list should want to get that big, because we tended to pick the ones that are bigger. What year is that? And what are the milestones on your way there? Do you want to be the biggest of your type of company in the city you operate in, or the country you operate in, or the region you operate in? It's a very common goal for Americans. We like to be biggest and best. However, we say that. Do you want to be a multinational company someday? Right? A multinational where? Right? It's really common for the companies in East Africa to say, I want to be biggest in my country, and then I want to be in the rest of the East Africa Union countries. It's really common in Nigeria for them to say, we're going to go off and do business in Ghana, and vice versa. It's really common in Francophone Africa to say, you know, we'll be multinational across Francophone Africa. Every once in a while, someone says they want to be in 54 countries. All right. How do you get there? So if you put that, let's just do the $1 million one because it's easier. What year do you think you're going to be a $1 million a year company? Let's just say that's 2023. You think you're going to get there. Okay. Well, if that's the goal in 2023, what are the revenues in 2022? So work backwards sometimes is helpful. So if you were $1 million a year in 23, and let's just say you're $100,000 a year now, and we're in 21. Well, we only got 1 year in between, which is 22. So, okay, this year you have a chance to grow bigger than 100. So let's say you're 100 last year. So you got 2 steps to get to $1 million. So what are the 2 steps? You're going to get to what this year? 250, and then 500, and then $1 million. That's a reasonable progression. It's pretty fast growth, but it's 2.5 times growth this year. It's then 2x growth the next 2 years, and you're at $1 million a year. It sounds like a piece of cake. If you were trying to tell me instead that you were 100,000 this year, like you expect to be 100,000 this year, but you're going to be $1 million in 2 years. Okay. Well, then by the end of the year, you're at 100,000. Next year, you're going to be what? You're going to be at 500,000 or 400,000. That's a 4x growth. And then to get from 400 to $1 million is more than doubled, right? 2.5x growth. 4x is really hard to do. right? It's possible. I've seen it done, but it's really hard to do. So is that a reasonable timeline? Maybe you're off by a year. Maybe if you're going to be 100 this year, maybe the goal shouldn't be to be 1 million sooner than 2024. Right? This is what I mean by being good at strategy and tactics, to be able to plan these things out. All right, what's it mean on the design side? So design side, do you have a great name in your company? These are some of the simplest things and some of the early things that are done at startups. Do you have a great name? It's never a good time to change it, but it's the best time to change it is now. The best time to change it is before you have a really big company. Do you have a great name? Do you have a name you're proud of? Do you have a name that your customers love? Do you have a name that just people adore, right? Do you have a logo? So assuming you get through that part, do you have a logo that people just think is great? People look at it and think you are, you must be really well funded. You must be really successful because you have a great logo. Creating a logo is a $300 problem. I have a blog post about $305 creating a logo. I'll show you some in a bit. It's not a big stretch, and there are African designers that can probably do it for less, but the global system I use is $305 for an amazing logo. Do you have a great website? So you may not need your website to sell to customers in Africa, but if you're raising money, whether that's grants or loans or equity, having a great website will increase your odds of getting funding. And a great website costs like $100. Literally, you just download some parts and some pieces and put it together. It'll take you a few days, but it will give you a presence of being funded. It will give you a presence that makes it look like you're a professional. And again, back to same idea, great packaging. So does your package look professional? Does the thing that you're selling, the bag of that you put the stuff in, does it look great, or does it just look okay? And in most of the African companies I come across, they have okay names, they get terrible logos, they got no website or a really crappy website, and their packaging just looks like it was handmade. None of that helps create the trust for customers or for funders. So for example, Golden Pot, it's a company that came through Fledge last year. I like the name. It was a company that was focused on maize. So golden in terms of maize, that makes sense. We were working on a logo for something else, and this logo got submitted into the contest, and it didn't work for what we were doing, but it just looked like a perfect logo for Golden Pot. They only work with women on top of everything else. So it's a company from Arusha in Tanzania that works with women farmers. This was just a gorgeous logo, and it just totally fit. So we gave it to them. I don't remember if they have a great website. This is their latest product. That looks like a professional. That looks like a product that would be sitting on a shelf here in the States or in Europe or in Japan, right? It's just a lovely package. The designer of this package was in Nigeria. So when you look at this company, you see a decent name, you see a great logo, you see a great looking package, right? This could be a Nestle. If you put a Nestle logo in the corner, you wouldn't be surprised, right, at this package. This company's tiny. This company hasn't yet to even earn 100,000 a year, right? But it looks like $1 million a year company or a $10 million a year company, right? It looks like it will lead the market in this new product, right? Just because it'll stand out on the shelf as great looking, right? And it costs less than $1,000 to do all this work. All right, onward to marketing. So the idea of marketing, if you've never taken a class in it, the idea of marketing is to create awareness of your company and your products. So not to sell things. Sales is about sales. The distinction between sales and marketing is that marketing creates awareness and sales closes the deals. So in terms of marketing, just the question is, how do your customers know that you exist, right? How did they hear about you? Are you out there measuring how did you hear about this company? When the salespeople step up in front of the customers, are they keeping track of if they talk to a customer, has the customer already heard about your company before or not? If not, marketing's not doing a great job. If they are, that's good. And then the next question is, great, where'd you hear about us? not everyone's going to remember, but some people will, and that will help you figure out whether or not you're spending the right money in the right places for marketing. Right? Trying to figure out other things that your salespeople can help your marketing team on is there any one place where your customers tend to be? And if there is, that's where you want to market, right? And that could be everyone's watching a certain TV show, everyone's listening to a certain radio program, everyone is it's regional, and so they're coming to this one marketplace. Like there are ways to figure out. Sometimes there is no way. Sometimes your customers are scattered and there is no one place to reach them. But you got to try and find some place that's common so you can go market. And the last one's just social media, right? It's the 21st century. Yeah, how do you reach out to these customers on social media? All right, on the sales side, the ideal version of sales is that your customers are calling you, that your salesperson is sitting there next to a telephone or an email address and just answering incoming requests. That's ideal sales. Rarely ever happens, but it does happen once in a while. Next best problem is that sales are easy, that 1 in 10 of the customers say yes, or better than 1 in 10, and that you just have too much demand. And then the next problem you'll have, it winds up in operations because you have too much demand and you can't actually satisfy all that demand. The salespeople, this is something that first-time entrepreneurs don't always understand, is that once you have your product in the market, your salespeople are the ones that are talking to customers, right? Whether your business model is to sell directly to customers or not, you should have somebody on staff who once in a while talks directly to customers. Until you're at $10 million a year, somebody should be talking to a customer, on voice, like not even on email, but on voice, so that you can try and understand what their problems are and what their needs are, to see if those needs change and to see what else you can deliver to them, right? The information of why everyone's saying no and the information of what else they could possibly buy is all that information sitting in your Salesforce. And so this is also why it's really useful for the founder to be decent at sales. If they're not great, to lead the sales calls, listen in on the sales calls. And if you are good, then you should we say pick up a bag and go do some sales once in a while. If you're the CEO, 1 day a week, you should be, at least 1 day a week, you should be selling, just so that you can hear those conversations directly from customers and figure out what else can be done. All right, on the financial side, if you have perfect financials, if you score 7 out of 7 on financials, then I can ask you, what was your P&L as of yesterday? And you can answer that question, right? And if you don't know what a P&L is, then you don't score 7 on this list. How much did you earn yesterday and the day before and last month and last year, last quarter? You should be able to know that the day after, right? A really well-run shop knows this the day after the quarter ends. So on, where are we? And we're in May now. So on April 1st, you should know what your Q1 numbers are. Most companies I know of everywhere, and I'd say especially Africa, but everywhere, most companies can't tell me what their Q1 numbers are until like May. It's too late in May. Like I don't understand how you can run a company and not know how much your sales were, or how much your expenses were. And I understand sometimes expenses trickle in, that's fine, but a good estimate of what your expenses were for Q1 on April 1st. And the year end on January 1st or January 2nd after the holiday. When I run a bunch of businesses, I send out my annual report on December 30th or December 29th. At the end of the year, usually quiets down in my business, and I will write up a 20-page annual report for my investors, and it will include financials for the year in December before the year's ended. And, there's a few dollars of interest that are sitting around, but I will get through all the expenses, make sure everything else is paid for, and my numbers will be off by, $10 or so. But I'm able to do that before the quarter ends, before the year ends. All the financials are in shape that's easy to do. There's no struggle to do that. The hardest one is the third one, which is what's needed in the future. So how much money are you going to need this quarter and next quarter and the final? How much, if your goal was $1 million a year, how much money are you going to need to get there? Can you do that all internally with profits? Can you do that with a few loans to get through those operational capital gaps? And when do you need those? When are the orders going to show up, which is a guess. But if the orders show up next month, okay, when do you need the money in order to fill the orders? Do you have everything you need now, or do you need more? We'll talk about financial modeling in a few weeks. Okay, on fundraising side, most companies need money to get to $1 million a year in business. I've not seen one that's bootstrapped to get there. I've seen companies that have only raised $50,000 to get there, but I've not seen anyone that bootstrapped completely. I'm sure it's happened, but I'm an investor, so of course I only see the companies that get investments. Do you know how to raise that money? Do you know where it comes from? Do you know which investors are investing in Zimbabwe or Cameroon or Nigeria or Uganda or whatnot? Do you know how to reach them? Do you know what they want? There are the unfortunate reality. We'll talk about realities of funding, I believe, in another week as well. But one of the realities in Africa are there are a reasonable number of investors in most countries, but not hundreds, which means you can't afford to do a bad job with any funder. You can't afford to learn by talking to some funders, hoping that you'll learn from the early conversations and get it right on the fifth try. You can't afford to burn 4 tries. You have to get it right the first time. So if you've not raised money before, you need to know how that works. You need to know what they want. You need to know why they're funding, what makes them happy in terms of an investee, everything that goes along with the process. And there's a jargon that goes along with it and onward. And then you need to expect to talk to a lot of them. So I've seen a big flaw with first-time entrepreneurs who say, "Oh my God, fundraising!" This happened at the first Land Accelerator, and one of the companies said, "Oh my God, this fundraising is driving me crazy. It is so hard." And I said, "Well, okay, how many funders did you talk to?" And this company was in Kenya, which is the #1 place to find startup funders. And she's like, "Oh my God, I must have talked to 4 of them by now." And I just slapped my head and laughed and said, "Oh my God, you have no idea. Like there are probably 100 funders in Kenya, and you need to talk to at least 40 or 50 of them. You can't. It's a sales process. You can't expect to close at 1 in 4. You should expect to close 1 in 20, right? That would be a decent close rate. So you got to go talk to 20 or 30 or 40 of them to get a good odds that you're going to close one of them, which is not fun. It's a totally not fun process. I do it almost every day, and I've done it almost every day for 20 years. I still don't enjoy it. It's still not fun. It's just something that needs to get done. I now do it more for other companies than my own company, but it still needs to get done, and it needs to get done well. And if you've not done it, we'll teach you a little bit about that. And then finally, we get to operations. So in operations, it's a very vast space. A few things I throw in there. One is, do you have quarterly and annual goals? I worked with a whole lot of startup CEOs. Only one of them brought this technique to us. I don't know if we'll have time to squeeze it in. But he had this process of having monthly management meetings, but every 4th meeting was quarterly goals. Sorry, every 3rd meeting was quarterly goals. So we would sit down and we would say, here's what we're going to do for Q1. Here's what we're going to do for Q2. And we would talk for an hour about this. And at the end of the year, we would set annual goals as well. And everything was aligned. Everything we did in the company was aligned to the quarterly and annual goals. It was amazing, simple little process. And so it's really useful, and hopefully I'll have time to teach that to you. Second one on here is you've probably faced some issues, some hurdles is what we generally call them. What were your last 3 issues? Like, do you know what they are? Are they going to happen again? Did you figure out a process so that they don't happen again? And in terms of planning, what do you think is going to happen next? This is one of the benefits that I have of working with so many entrepreneurs. If you tell me what your company is, I can probably tell you what the next 3 hurdles are, or the next 5 hurdles. just because I've seen the same patterns over and over again. If you use this network that we have here to share, all the way down to what issues are you facing, does anyone have any advice? You will start to get some knowledge out of the network, and you will start to get some. If you watch this, if it's done in a public forum, right? We have this the online the bigger chat space online. If you guys start sharing those issues, then that will help the younger companies see what the upcoming hurdles are and see what the solutions are, and will help them through them much quicker. This is one reason why we do these in cohorts. All right, the other thing that will help you in this process is if you go to this book, again, here's the URL to this specific book. But if you go to the next step page, you just click on the blue book, it'll bring you there. The entire text of the book is sitting online. It's a one chapter per web page. And what you'll find is that each chapter has a few questions in it, right? Total of 51 questions for the entire book. If you simply go through the book and answer all the questions, you will have everything you need to build a business plan. You won't have a business plan. You won't have a pitch deck yet, but you'll have all the pieces you need to put one together. And so what I suggest as homework for today, two things. I suggest you go and do the skills map. And then I suggest you go read the book in the next week and answer the 51 questions. And you may not be able to answer them all in a week, but they'll give you an idea of all the things you need to be thinking about and get you on this path of business planning. And that will increase your odds of success. All right, so let me tell you about some companies that I've worked with to try and explain what this looks like in real life. So the first native African company I worked with is in Tanzania. I met them in 2014. They're called East Africa Fruits. When I met them, when they came here to Seattle and we invited them here to the Fledge program, the company was 15 months old. They had done $100,000 in year one. And it's just a fruit and vegetable aggregator. There's no technology here. There's no invention. They just buy fruits and vegetables from smallholder farmers. They don't have a farm. So they buy from existing smallholder farmers. They sort the produce, and then they originally sold to restaurants and hotels in Dar, and now they sell to lots of different types of retailers as well. So they went from $100,000 a year in year one to $300,000 a year in year two. All we gave them to do that growth was $67,000. 17,000 is equity and 50,000 is debt. They use that money to go and grow the network of farmers and to grow the number of customers. The secret to this company, if there is a secret, is quality. So the key piece that they're selling is a steady supply of quality food. And what quality means in this case is that these days they're a much bigger company, a multi-million-dollar company. So they go around the country collecting fruits and vegetables in refrigerated trucks now, right? They have enough cash flow to go do this at scale. So they have a fleet of these white refrigerated trucks that literally drive to the farms, pick up the fruits, pick up the vegetables, and all the stuff they sell is sitting on the side of this truck here, right? So just think potatoes and onions. Those are the two mainstays. So they go and get large bags of potatoes and onions. They bring them to this facility here, which was paid for with winning a business plan competition and then getting a loan. But the business plan competition was the key. And so they bring this stuff to this facility. It gets laid out on the bags get laid out on a table. 10 women surround the table, and they sort the produce into three groups. Compost. It's not. No one would buy it. Goes in the compost heap. Really good. Best of, whatever you want to call it. Highest quality. A grade A. It goes in a bucket. Everything else goes back in bags. The stuff that's in the grade A gets sold to the restaurants and hotels because they'll pay more. Right? Those are the best paying customers, and they'll pay more because they know that there's only grade A in their buckets, right? In their deliveries. That's what they want, right? The restaurants and hotels don't want the one rotten piece at the bottom of the barrel that just makes them upset and makes it so they don't want to do business with you. Just getting rid of that compost is kind of the key. And the same thing for the retailers. They're happy that they're getting all quality produce with nothing compostable hiding at the bottom of the bucket. Right? And this happens in the States too. When I buy a bag of fruit, which I do on a regular basis, or a box of fruit, a case of fruit, there's almost always one bad one at the bottom. And it would be really nice if it wasn't there. I just don't have another source to go buy it from that will not have that one in there. But East Africa Fruit does that. Right? And then in terms of, like I said, go find out what else your customers will buy. Well, they did that. And it turns out that their customers, hey, Deborah, you need to mute yourself.
Oh my God, this Zoom meeting. My mind's just there.
Deborah
What's it called?
Okiemi? No, she's on the phone, or Amanda will mute her. So they did that. They went and talked to their customers, and they found out that what they really wanted was they wanted rice and beans in that same manner. They wanted rice and beans where they know that there's no rocks in the in the bag. There's no sticks. There's no twigs. There's no leaves. It's clean. And so they started doing that with rice and beans. And literally, I was there watching when this was fairly new. Literally, the rice would be just dumped onto a table, and the women, when they weren't sorting onions, would go upstairs and they would literally pick out all the rocks and all the twigs and all the leaves by hand from the rice. One dump at a time, and then everything left on the table would be clean and it'd get dumped in a bag. Same thing with the beans. So they started a brand for that. And I don't know where they're ranking at the moment, but that year one, they were third biggest rice company in Tanzania, just because they were cleaning the stuff. And then they started doing bananas. And also do note that while I'm showing you these things, they got decent brands, and they're branding the different products, different brands on purpose. They got decent brands. They got nice looking logos. Everything looks professional. Like, this looks like a well-funded company, and it is a well-funded company in this case. But I'll just go back real quick. This logo was there when they were $100,000 a year company. Like, they've updated it slightly, but this is the actual logo they walked into the program with. Totally fine logo. It's a little bit Western, right? They don't sell carrots. I don't even think they sell strawberries, but that's why they changed the fruit over here. But the general design of the logo looked great in the first year. All right, another example company is Obama Stove. This is the largest cook stove company in Ethiopia. It was, I would say, is accidentally started by a taxi driver. He was an Ethiopian refugee. He was living here by me in Seattle. He went back home one year, like 07. And he just, instead of doing what normal people do, which is send money back to his family, he started a cook stove company, and it became the largest cook stove company in Africa at the time. It got passed up since then, but they've sold almost 500,000 of these stoves, and they were profitable. Whenever there's nothing abnormal going on, it's a profitable company. Abnormal being a pandemic or 2.5 years of revolts. His is Yusuf. So when he came, he didn't have a good name for this company. It was like Green Energy Without Borders. It sounded like a nonprofit. Some nonprofiteers came up with the name. He didn't have a logo. Like, this company didn't look like a real company, even though it was making money. So we rebranded it Obama Stove. It's a long story on why Obama was the name of the stove, but it was. We didn't pick it. But it was the Obama. This is the Obama Stove. So we named the company after the product. We called it Obama Stove. No space. We spent our $305 on a logo. It took us 2 days. He really liked this logo. It's good. It's not amazing, but it's good enough. And the company's grown since then. So sometimes just that little bit of branding just helps a bunch, right? I already showed you this product from Golden Pot. This is a second product of theirs. Their first product's maize flour. They were trying to figure out, in this case, it went the other way around. It wasn't what did the customers want? What else do the customers want? This is what else can we produce? So we're growing maize. What else can we produce on the same farms that A, will help the maize grow better, and B, is a second line of product that won't have the same price fluctuations as maize, right? Maize goes up and down with the weather. And so they decided on ground nuts. And they decided that there was a need out there to sell basically peanut butter to schools, right, in Tanzania, and that if only they had a machine that would put the peanut butter in, and these are called sachets. They're a lot smaller than they look. This is kind of zoomed in. They figured out that if they put them in sachets, that they thought that would sell really well. They had some research for that. And it turned out that another one of my companies had a sachet machine that they weren't using. So they bought it from them. So this is their new product, Golden Nutri. And not the best name, but they wanted to keep the golden part. Talking about some more branding. Swahili Honey, we helped rebrand them. They had a different brand name when we met them. They were using the Swahili Honey brand for their honey, but they were using a different name for their company. That's a common mistake. You don't, as a startup, you don't have enough resources to have more than one name. So you can't call yourself X and then sell a product name Y. Like no one will generally know what X is because you can't spend any time marketing that brand. They'll only know what Y is. And so if they only know what Y is, if they've only ever heard of Swahili Honey because they've seen that on a shelf, then why don't you just name the company Swahili Honey? It's kind of similar with Obama stove. Like if they're buying the Obama stove, it should be sold by a company named Obama Stove or the Obama Stove Company or Obama Inc. or something. So we rebranded the company Swahili Honey. They already had this logo, which I really loved. So I got permission to reuse it in Botswana. So more or less copied it. The package, I always thought their packaging looks amazing. When I met this company, it was like $200,000 a year, $150,000 a year. It wasn't a humongous company, but their packaging looked great. Sitting on shelves with everyone else's products in Tanzania, it looks better. It looks as good or better than everyone else's packaging. It's the second largest honey company in Tanzania, and has been for a while. And then Kalahari Honey got started up. This is a Land Accelerator graduate from the first cohort. It's by far the largest honey company in Botswana. I'm not showing the honey here. I'm showing mead. What happened with Kalahari Honey is that she did the Land Accelerator. We rebranded the company. It was Chibana Farms. So we did from Chibana Farms to do some continuity. That's subsequently been dropped. That's gone now. It's just Kalahari Honey. She came, I invited her to Fledge Seattle. It happens with some of the Land Accelerator companies. So she came out here for 2 months. We worked on her business plan. And while she was here, she discovered mead, which is wine made from honey. And in her home country of Botswana, there's one alcohol company, and it's owned by a South African, which is normal in Botswana. And they make beer, right? It's just the beer company, but no other spirits are made in the country of Botswana. So she's like, well, let's go make one. Let's go make mead, the official spirit of Botswana. So she had a bunch of mead made here in Seattle, brought back just to show what it was like. And now she's sending honey to Seattle and having her honey made into mead. And someday we hope to actually make a meadery in Botswana. That's a matter of money. It just costs money to do that we don't have yet. This is by far the largest. This company is my poster child for operational capital gaps. We just keep getting, customers just keep calling us. 18 times this has happened. Customers will call and say, I would like to order, very large number, tons of honey packaged in containers in a cardboard box, delivered to Namibia or Lesotho or Zambia or whatnot. This is the honey in Botswana is just amazing. And so they all want her honey. And we just can't keep up. We literally have we call this a high class problem. We can't deliver everything that's ordered from us. We just don't have enough money to do that. There isn't enough honey in Botswana to deliver every order. We have to grow our production as well. Okay, another story. This one is back to Tanzania again. It was a middle-class woman in Tanzania who was reading an article about local foods. She went to the store one day and said, okay, well, I'm supposed to buy local, so I'll buy the local sunflower oil. And she couldn't find any. There wasn't any local sunflower oil on the shelf. So she made a company to do that. It's called Obri Tanzania. She got invited to the Nature Accelerator in Italy a few years ago. And again, the company was like $200,000, $250,000 a year when we met her. We got her some money, and it took off. So we met her somewhere in the middle of 2018. So we didn't know it was a $500,000 a year. It was on track to do 200 and change. We invested a little bit of money, and lo and behold, the next year it doubled, and it was $1.1 million. And then the pandemic knocked it down, and we expect it to be 2 million next year. This kind of growth is possible. I'm showing you this because I've seen it a few times now. A small amount of money at just the right time into a market that has the scale of sunflower oil, the sale of cooking oil, like where everybody needs it. You can jump up from literally $100,000 company to $1 million in 2 years. It's been done before. It can be done again. It does take some money. This was not done with nothing. This was not bootstrapped. There was about $60,000 invested between here and here, but it only cost us about $60,000 to get $1 million a year company. And we only invested 75 last year to hope to get it to 2. And it might be more, right? It might take us more. One of the metrics I use as an investor is how much money is generated in revenue per dollar of investment. And so this is one reason why we asked you in your application, how much have you ever raised and how much did you earn last year? And as long as that ratio is even or better than even, like you make more money than you put in, that's a good company. That's a metric that will excite investors. And if it took you $5 of investment to earn $1 of revenue, it's not as good. Yeah, that's typical. That's not going to excite investors. And I think this is my last one here. Yeah. And so this one's unrelated to land. It's not restorative agriculture at all. This is actually an agrovet company in Malawi. But it's really, I love this story. So about 5 years ago, maybe even 6 years ago, I found this little tiny company in Malawi called Zoeto Enterprise. And Zoeto is Chichewa for animal, local language. So it's, they sell stuff to keep animals alive and healthy. And so it was a tiny little company that was serving the most rural part of Malawi, way up north, outside the cities, outside the towns. They had 3 little shops, and they were selling agrovet supplies, and they didn't have this much stuff in any of those shops. This is years later in their big shop. I took this picture. But when you're in the market and you're listening to not just your customers, but in this case, your vendors, you're listening to their issues. You're talking to them about how you can make their lives better. Right? So in this case, they were simply buying from one distributor. Almost all their products were Kepro products, which is a European brand. Right at the top here. And so like 80% of the stuff in their stores was being purchased from this one distributor. And so rather than just having a transactional relationship with this distributor where they just bought the stuff and never really talked to them, they talked to the guy who was running the company. And one day he said, "I'm selling the company." So they had a little bit of luck. They found out that the distributor was for sale. And luck is something that shows up in startups quite often, but it's not the kind of luck where you're walking down the street and you find a pile of money sitting on the ground, right? Or a bag of gold, let's just say. That's total luck, right? The kind of luck, excuse me. The kind of luck I'm talking about is you have your eyes and your ears open and you are eager to figure out how to make your company better. And so you are literally talking to people all around, all the stakeholders, we would say, all your customers, all your vendors, all your supporters, all the people who aren't buying from you. You're trying to gather the information from them. And so they had a little bit of luck. They found out that this distributor was for sale. So they shot me an email and they said, the distributor's for sale. It's $250. He's looking for $250,000. Now, the company Zoeto at the time was earning like $30,000 a year. That was like year 3. So again, they would be in that middle batch of companies, which most of you are in. Totally fine company, but nowhere near, we weren't dreaming about $1 million a year company at that point. We were just trying to get our 4th store and our 5th store up. We had 3 to start with. And here they are asking, can we buy the distributor for $250,000? And just so you understand, it's not normal for an investment into a company to be bigger than last year's revenues. So if they were $30,000 a year, I might be able to stretch that to $40,000 or even $50,000 investment, but asking for 250 is just like crazy. It's like any company here asking for $10 million. The answer is no. No funder is going to give you $10 million. You haven't proved the ability to deploy that much money or manage that much money. So here they are, they're asking for this enormous sum of money, but I'm not a normal investor. So what I did is I searched the world for investors who have invested in Malawi. So I used my network to try and find other money out there. Actually, I had no other money for them at the time. I only did my little investments in my accelerator at the time. So I had no choice but to go find other investors. So I searched and searched and searched, and I found only 2 other institutional investors who had ever invested in Malawi. And I think that's accurate. I think I found everybody there was at the time, which was 2. Right? I said Kenya has hundreds, Malawi had 2. And so I reached out and I actually got to speak to both of them. One of them didn't like AgroVet supplies, anything in agriculture. He was in South Africa, so that was out. And the other one was a family office from the UK, and they were no longer operating in Malawi. So they had invested, but were no longer doing it. And so I went back to these guys and I said, sorry, there's only 2 investors and neither of them are interested. Can't help you. So what did they do? Well, they continue talking to the distributor who really wants to sell, who's going to have a hard time selling because there aren't any institutional buyers either. And a few months later, they send me back an email and they said, it's still for sale. It's $250,000. And I said, that's nice, but there aren't any investors for that. In my work, I talk to investors all the time. And if another one had popped up, I would have told them, but nothing popped up. And so they reach out to me again a few months later. It's like 6-month process here. So 6 months after the first conversation, they write back and they say, well, here's what happened. We went to the bank and we took out a personal loan guaranteed for $25,000. And I asked them, oh my God, how much did the bank charge you for that? And they said 36% interest. I said, that's crazy. They said, yeah, but we talked the guy down to $75,000. So can you find us 50? If we have $50,000, we can buy this company. And so we bought the company for $75,000. Right? A company that was doing, they gave us their financials and they were doing like $350,000 in business. We bought for $75,000. One more metric you should understand: your company is worth at least whatever your revenues were last year. So if you did $100,000 last year, your company is worth at least $100,000. It's probably worth 2 times what your revenues were last year if you've been growing. So if you did $100,000 a year, it's probably worth 200. That metric doesn't really work if you have a $30,000 a year company, but 100,000 and up, that's a reasonable way to value a company. So here we have a company that was doing $350,000. It was worth at least 250. It was probably worth 300 or 400, except it was in Malawi and there were no buyers. And so we bought it for 75. So we were able to jump this company from $30,000 a year, and the next year they did like $400,000 and $450,000 a year and profitable. We were able to do that in one leap with $75,000 of investment capital. And this company will get to $1 million. It still hasn't got to $1 million. Hasn't had that Obrey curve to it, but I think it'll be $1 million a year company in about 2 years.
Can you
And
just
they now
remind
have
us?
like 12
Can you
stores.
just remind us what was the original company and what was the second company that you bought, and where did the 75,000 come from?
Okay, so the original company was they had used their own money I think they got a small grant and they used their own money, and it was $30,000 a year. So call it year 3, $30,000 a year. It might have been year 2, but close enough. And that was $30,000 a year on like 10,000 or 12,000 of investment capital. So in that metric of capital efficiency is what I call it. They had done, let's just say, $1.50 per dollar of investment, which is good. That's totally fine. And then they were able to buy this other company. I don't even know what I got to go look up what it was called. Where it's now just Soweto Enterprise. So they bought this other company that was doing about $300,000 in business. Maybe it was $350,000. And we bought that company for $75,000, and they had taken out $25,000 loans, so they were only asking for $50,000. I found them $75,000 because I didn't want them to still have this crazy high bank loan. And so I found $75,000 from 3 angels here in the States. Angels typically write checks of $25,000. So it's not feasible to find 10 angels to go and raise $250,000 for an acquisition like this, because again, the close rate for new angels is about 1 in 10. So if I needed 10 investors to do 250, I would have to have 100 conversations with investors. But I could get 3 investors to say yes because I already had a bunch of investors. At this point, I probably had like 40 investors in my company. And so I could go back to my 40 investors and sell them something new. I could go back to these investors and say, hey, there's this amazing opportunity in front of us. For $75,000, we can have a company that's now worth, again, worth, at least 1x revenues, at least, add the 2 together, at least $400,000. So for $75,000, we can buy something that's worth $400,000, maybe $500,000 or $600,000 or $700,000. And so that's a pretty easy sell. I took 3 of my existing investors, and they each wrote a check for about $25,000, and we were done. That took me, I don't know, 4 days to raise money, or 5 days to raise money. That was not a multi-month long process. It was not hard, but it was, an amazing opportunity that fell in our lap because they were out listening, right? The lesson here is good things happen to companies that are out listening to the market. They don't happen all the time. I only have one story like this, but it happens.
And Looney, oh yeah, questions. Yeah. Perfect. I was just going to say we're about reaching the end of the official time, yep. But we'd like to invite everybody to put their questions forward, as well as to stay online for a couple of minutes if you can for this conversation that's continuing. I just wanted to thank Looney so far for this time. So
okay, ça va, John.
Gabenga, do you have a question? Not sure if he does. Let me also go to the chat box. Samuel, have you identified any questions in here? So I've got a question which is about the office hours. Can office hours be used to talk through marketing and sales strategy? So office hours will be a group setting, and we can definitely use that to answer questions going back and forth. So in a general sense, it can be used for that, but we also wouldn't be able to work on one person's sales and marketing strategy, but hopefully you'll be able to take notes and improve it. And you might even be able to share it with the group for some group input. And now I have a question from Olan Rewahu. Says, how do we submit assignments? That's fantastic. So just to say, the assignments for today that Looney came up with for us and presented for us was to do your skills assessment, 1, and 2, I did write it down. Let me see. I wrote it down in my notes. Do you remember it, Looney, off the top of your head? Answer the 52 questions. So to skim through your guide and answer the 52 questions. I want to say that this is for self-development. So this is where things are optional and encouraged. We'll let you know the next time that there is a specific document due. And I also wanted to point everybody Thanks, Looney, for the link to your website there in the chat box. I'm going to be sending these links and everything as well, following up along with the recording and the slides. So Looney, if you can get me your slides today, that would be fantastic. Then the other thing I wanted to remind folks about was to take a look at the attendance chart that I had put in the chat earlier, and I'm scrolling up to it. So maybe while I'm doing that, Samuel, can you take a look for additional questions that we can ask to Looney? Let's see.
Yes, thanks, Amanda. Actually, no much question, apart from people appreciating what Looney has been presenting. When Looney was presenting about a vegetable company in Tanzania, there's somebody already who is doing a similar business in Congo, and it would be good to connect the two also for learning purposes. Should be Mvuti, who is doing an amazing work. I just checked their website. Yeah, I'm looking through. I can't see any more.
I have a quick question, Samuel. It's Nico. My apologies for joining late today. It's in connection with all the publications that Looney authored. In case I can write a proposal for the AFR 100 to purchase 100 copies of each. Is there a discount that we can come to, or can we do this bilaterally via email? Because I think they will help a lot.
Yeah, shoot me an email. What I can do for you, we'll come up with a price, and then I can create a login for everybody on here, and they can read all the books online. So they're just all the books are behind a login. I'd say a paywall, except there's no way to pay. So if you want to buy a login for everybody, that's fine. We can do that on email.
That would be a fantastic.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks for the idea, Teko, and thanks, Looney, for helping us set that up.
Hello, Amanda.
I have a question.
I also have a question here.
Let's have Olayemi go first. Olayemi, please.
Okay, thank you very much. My question goes to Mr. Looney. What we do majorly on our farm is planting of plantain and oil growing of palm trees. So as regards to marketing and sales, how is it applicable to plantain? How can we take it, applying technology to it to get to a greater level?
Well, if it's a business that there's a bunch of businesses in here that sell seedlings or give seedlings or something. There, if you're putting trees in the ground somewhere, somebody owns that piece of land. That is your customer. Whether they're paying you or someone else is paying you, you have to get permission from the person to put the tree in the ground. Those people have to know you exist and have to want the tree in the ground. And then if they're paying you, then there's all the issues about what the price is to them. And if someone else is paying you because you're doing this, and we've seen some models where there's a third party paying to get the orchard set up, then you have a more complicated business. We would call that a two-sided or three-sided business. And then you need to get all the customers aware of your business so that all the demand matches up. So simple version of this, real quick, simple version of this is a marketplace where you have farmers that are putting food into the marketplace and then customers buying on the other side of the marketplace. You have to have the same amount of food come in one end as the same amount of food go out the other end. So same thing with planting. You have to have enough demand for the seedlings to go in the ground as you have demand for the food at the other end that comes off of the trees. And you have to have awareness.
The land is okay.
You have to have awareness on both sides that this system exists so that you can get enough trees in the ground and get enough sales on the other side. So how do you do that? It depends on the country and it depends on what the business is. And it's generally some mix of print advertising, social media, and radio ads. Those are the three main paths in Africa.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have a question, ma'am.
Hello, I have a question, Mr. Looney.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead. Mandu.
Yeah, good. I am Mandu from the Gambia, and I'm into rice production and processing, and it's been very difficult for me to get investors from the Gambia to invest in my company to scale my operations up, despite the availability of market for rice, because 99% of the Gambian population sees rice as their staple food. And what I try to do is to formalize my operations, get a very good packaging, and try to list my products on some of the e-commerce platforms around. And I've done all that just to create this robust product awareness out there and entice investors, either locally or internationally.
Yeah. So just to break in, since we're running late here, there are countries in Africa that have no investors. So I have not done business in the Gambia yet. My guess is that is one of the countries that has very few investors, if not zero. The one fund that I know of that does all of Francophone Africa is INP. It's INP. It's based in Paris. But I don't know of any others. So in the former British part of Africa, I know in Botswana, I believe I'm the only institutional investor in Botswana for startups. Period. Like, it happens. When that happens, what I suggest is that you don't give up. You keep trying, because new investors do show up all the time, but you just go down a path of finding a grant. You go find which NGOs, which governments are doing grants, and you apply for grants and try and get some money that way.
My question is. I have a question. I have a question, please.
Yeah, Dr. Afolabi.
Okay, thank you very much, Amanda and Looney. There are three things I want to say. One is appreciation. Two, questions. Three, requests. My name is Dr. Afolabi Abiodun Ademola. I'm a co-founder of Global Life Farm. I want to appreciate Looney for the way he has taken us through this lecture. You've added a lot in terms of the strategy to be used, also the financials and other area. I want to say this, ma'am. Olayemi that I just talked, she's the one handling the marketing and the sales aspects of this company. And she has done a lot by even brought the the sales manager, the white, to the farm. What I'm doing, I'm supporting her in terms of financial and other operations. Sir, this is my question, sir. When you look at Nigeria, we are in a very good environment. We have a lot of good opportunity, but currently, what we are currently doing, that is sales of plantain to the giant retail store in Nigeria, ShopRite. In Nigeria, currently there's no plantain. This is let me put in that way, because we lack irrigation. Because plantain is usually planted in Southwest, but in Southwest we don't have water. Currently, we are unable to meet up their demand. My question, sir, is, with this opportunity, I want you to link this to fundraising. That how can we be funded, getting some fundraiser that can support us on irrigations? We don't need money, but what we actually need to scale up our production is about irrigation. Tomorrow, they ask us to deliver about 2 tons of a plantain. but it's been very, very difficult for us to get that. The opportunity are there. The land we have is supported to us by government.
Okay. I got it. So the question is, how do you get irrigation when you don't have the money to pay for irrigation? Is basically what it boils down to. So where could the funding come for that? And again, it's a struggle. Nigeria is a pretty popular country in terms of capital for early companies. It's probably number 2 or 3 on the continent. But it's a humongous country, which means, you know, the money that's flowing in tends to flow into 2 things. One is it flows into the bigger companies. So the ones that are $1 million a year get more money by far than the ones that are 100,000. The ones that are smaller than that don't get funding. Rarely get funding. And the second one is a problem that I see all over the continent, which is the expat companies get more money than the native run companies. Personally, I find that to be as disturbing as you do. And I don't partake in that. So how do you get up to that next level where you can afford the irrigation is the challenge. And I don't have an answer for that. You have to, the best thing I can tell you is you have to find something that will earn enough money that will get you, to buy a commercial irrigation system. And sometimes that's just a matter of just starting a lot smaller than you think. So if you have an acre or 2 acres or a group of farmers and it's 10 acres, well, yes, the dream is 10 acres all irrigated, but it's just not going to happen to start with. So how do you get the very smallest irrigation system you could possibly think of, which could just be literally could be something that's handmade, which is some hose you find that you poke holes in yourself, a barrel that you find used somewhere, gravity fed, and you are just literally hand filling the barrel with water to do drip irrigation, as opposed to, what everyone's dreaming about, which would be a solar powered drip irrigation system with a borehole. Like that would be lovely, but that would be $100,000 of investment. And a company that's doing, I can't look up yours right now, but a company doing 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, $70,000 a year isn't going to get an investment of $100,000 of irrigation. That's just not going to happen. So how my pushback to you is what can you scrounge together? What could you possibly do with the resources you have to start yourself down that path, even if that's just one small area in one part of one farm, just to show off what irrigation would do, so that you have the story to tell the grantors or the funders that, okay, we put irrigation on this one little space that's just, 3 meters by 3 meters, and the product we were producing grew 5 times bigger. And so, please give us money so we can do the rest. Like stories are the main part of selling in terms of fundraising. It's why storytelling shows up on my chart. It used to show up on my chart of things you need to know how to do.
Do we have time for another question?
I think maybe this can be the last question. And I also want to share that I want to highlight a section in Mighty Networks that's called questions after the session. So anyone can go into the Mighty Networks under the topics and go ahead and look at that afterwards too. So after your question, I'll just show you guys on the screen what it looks like. And you can leave your questions there literally right now, and we'll be getting to them this week. Everybody from myself, Samuel, Teiko, we'll be all taking a look at your questions there. So yeah, go ahead with your question, Isela, and then I will show everybody how they can put the rest of their questions into the Mighty Networks for us all to read. Thanks.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, we can hear you, please.
Yeah, I had a slight disconnection. We got approached, I'm talking on behalf of Fine Fusion Concepts in Uganda. And although we registered October last year, we actually started we launched the product in February this year. And we were doing bin value addition. Some of our products are really, really simple since we're doing bushland bins. We simply cleaned them up and, polished them, packaged them for the market. And with that, we also launched a bin porridge because the particular bin we're using is rich in micronutrients. And we do have a problem of malnutrition and anemia. That's just a background. So we put that on the market just in a small town in Jinja. And then we got approached by a big company that's about 20 years old that was looking to develop its product line. And they approached us to develop a product for them, in particular porridge, which was what we were already trying to launch. Now, the challenge is, we had two kinds of challenges. Their branding is horrid. We even feel it's outdated. And also, they haven't really changed their product in the last 20 years, but they are 20 years old. And they did approach us. Then the dilemma is also that we're trying to grow our own brand. So we're just in that dilemma of what do? We have no money. They have the experience, but then they also seem complacent from what we see.
I got it. I got it.
Yeah.
So the key word you're looking for is non-exclusive. So the answer is yes. We would love to supply you with this porridge in a non-exclusive relationship. And they'll push back on that, and they will say, no, we want exclusivity. And you will say, so this is a really good problem to have for everybody who's listening. So when a bigger, more powerful company comes along, they will always say, we want exclusive rights to this and that. And so there's two ways around that. One is to say, okay, but if you want exclusivity, it will cost you, and then you name a number that's just outrageously high. If they want exclusivity, it's 100 million shillings per year, right? Or 1 billion shillings per year. Whatever you think is way too high. Right? The equivalent of if you're a small company now, give us $250,000 a year and you can be our exclusive porridge seller, right? If they say yes, okay, you now have an enormous sum of money and you can go do something else. You make porridge for them and then you go find the next problem to solve, right? You're an entrepreneur. That shouldn't be a problem. They'll most likely say, no, that's crazy. And you say, it's fine. Well, we'll give you a non-exclusive agreement. And then what you do is you narrow down what they want in terms of exclusivity. So fine, you have an exclusive, you are the only company we will sell the porridge to for this period of time. And for that level of exclusivity, we'll only charge you, whatever we can charge you for the porridge plus, I don't know, $10,000 a year or 15,000, whatever small increments you think you can get out of them, that they'll say. And that's just a little bit of extra money that you'll use to grow your business. But you write the exclusivity in a way that you can still sell your own product. So you'll just define exclusivity to selling to another company, but it doesn't preclude you from selling it yourself under your own brand. And that then gets you cake and you eat it too, and it gets them what they want, and they'll dismiss you as a potential competitor because you're tiny. But they're not going to worry about you and your new little brand. So, worst case, you just tell them straight up, like, we're going to sell this too. Is that okay? And you can say, we're going to sell it too. We're just going to start selling it in Jinja. Like, you don't have to worry about us. We're a tiny little company, but we want to be able to learn from customers and get this better. So we want to be able to sell it. And we're just going to do that in Jinja. Just make sure that the contract doesn't say that you can't also sell it in Kampala or Kigali or anywhere else that's big. And they'll seriously, if they're 20 years old, they're not going to worry about some small company competing with them.
Thank you.
All right, off to you, Amanda.
So yeah, at this time, just wanted to let everybody know if there's additional questions, you can go to the Mighty Networks, which again, we'll share one more time via email with everybody here. And again, you can see my screen now. If you're at the home screen, where do you go to leave questions? You know, you can always post on the main part here, but you can go to topics. And there in topics, you'll see I updated, again, just based on some innovations and hearing what people were wanting, I hope. Everybody had a lot more questions than we could answer today. So I put a section in here called questions after the sessions. So you can click on it and you can put any question that you have right there. And we'll be able to go through it and answer it throughout the week. So again, pretty easy to get to. And we'll be following up one more time with that. And we've already got Looney's slides. I want to say thank you. So we want to say we will be having our first office hours on Thursday as well, where we can have group discussions about different topics that you learned here today, and about perhaps going through, we can even go through some of the skills together, the skills mapping. We can hear from people who might have done the skills mapping. So Samuel and I will join you on Thursday. Whoever likes to come, we'll be sending the invitation to that today. And Samuel, do you have any other remarks, or Looney? So then we'll see you all here next week, and do check your email because the link might update. So we'll be sure to give you the latest email in your email in the calendar invitation, as well as in the reminder that we send out a day before and a few minutes before we start next week. So really thanks everybody, and we'll be seeing you again soon. Thank you guys. Have a good one. Oh, Samuel says, please unmute me. Oops, let me see if I can. Samuel has something to say. So sorry, Samuel. There's a lot of people to scroll through here. Samuel, yes, please go ahead. I think you can.
Yes, thanks, Amanda. I was actually on mute. So thank you so much for this session and everybody who has participated. Mine is a kind reminder. The attendance list is very important, even as we move forward. So make sure you fill it, everybody who is actually here, because that is the determinant at the end of the day, whether you are here. We cannot remember everyone. So thank you so much. And Looney, thanks so much for this session. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Samuel, for the reminder. And I keep putting it here into the chat box. I think, oops, there it comes into the chat box. So anyone who's still here who hasn't had a chance, please go ahead and check it out, put it into the chat box a few times, and we'll just stay online while you have the chance to access that link. And we'll close this link in a few seconds. Thank you all so much. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you guys all too for joining us. Okay, that should be enough time. And Samuel, this was really, really fun. And I know that I learned a lot, and we're really excited to share this with you guys in Mighty Networks. Bye now.